Hey guys, today we're going to be comparing 10 vintage 50mm lenses, all of which can be had for less than $100. I'm super excited about this video and I've had a lot of fun making it, but it wouldn't have been possible without our friends at KEH.com who sent us most of these lenses to play with. Basically, I told KEH we'd love to see a bunch of their top-selling vintage 50mm lenses that can be purchased for less than $100, and they liked that idea. So here we are. For those of you unfamiliar with KEH, if you buy used photo gear, you definitely should get to know them. Pretty much everything that we buy used now, we do buy straight from them. Between their generous guarantees and the consistent lens quality evaluation, I really don't have any problem recommending them, even if they didn't send us cool stuff like this to play with. So be sure to check them out. Now, before we dive into the nitty-gritty of these 10 lenses, I do have to give the disclaimer that I have been shooting these lenses adapted onto my Fuji X-T3, which is an APS-C device. It's not a full frame device. So I won't be talking about what I see in the very corners of these lenses because I don't have access to the very corners. If that's gonna bother you, feel free to stop watching now. I will link to a video about cats or something to cheer you up and make you feel better. But for everyone else who doesn't mind a little bit of croppage, let's compare some vintage lenses. So let's talk about the toys we have to play with here. And from my left, your right, representing Team Nikon, we have two Nikkor lenses, AIS lenses. We have the 1.8 and the 1.4. And then for Team Canon, we have two 1.8 lenses actually. We have the SC 50mm 1.8 and then the non-coated version, the newer one. Next for Team Minolta, we've got two Rocors, the 1.7 Rocor X and then the 1.4. And next, of course, we have everyone's favorite radioactive friend, the Super Takumar Asahi 50mm 1.4 lens. And then the newer, I guess a newer version of that, the Pentax Smc 1.4. Not the super version, but it is the newer version. And then we have, representing Olympus, we have one lens. This is the Wiko, the F-Wiko 1.8 lens. And then finally we have the Carl Zeiss planar 1.7 50mm lens Contax mount. Now, of course, there are probably hundreds and hundreds of other vintage 50mm lenses we could have reviewed, but we chose these 10 because they can all be had at a great condition for under $100, and they are what KEH said are some of their best sellers. And because we had to draw the line somewhere, this is what you get. But today I really hope I can settle on which of these vintage 50mm lenses is the one that I'm gonna keep and use. And if that process, the process I went through to learn that, also helps you, well, that's just icing on the cake. Before we get into image quality, I do wanna start by taking a look at build quality of these lenses. Of course, part of the magic of using vintage adapted lenses on a Fuji body especially is the appeal of the form factor. These old hefty glass and in many cases metal beauties keep you connected to the shooting experience, not so disconnected as the world goes more and more the opposite direction, more towards things like computational photography and automatic settings. These ones keep you in touch, I feel like, keep you more in touch with the photographic process. So when it comes to using these, some are definitely more solid and pleasant to use than others, and the ones that I actually like the most is this odd duck of the group, at least to use. This isn't necessarily my favorite lens, but it is my favorite to touch and feel. It's a solid lens with a great feel to it. This is the Super Takumar 1.4, of course. I really like these kind of serrated ridges that give you that nice grip. It's nice and damped. The aperture also has those kind of serrated ridges, and it's just a nice lens to use. Of course, I should mention that many of these are on the adapter. I probably could have taken them off, but I didn't. Oh well, we're going forward. The next one though that I want to talk about is this guy. I really like this one, the feel of this, the Olympus F-Wiko 1.8. Really, all the lenses in these series are really fun to use. I really love how damped it is. It feels nice, but this grip, this kind of textured grip on the focus throw is really nice. The only thing you could probably say about the build quality of it is that it's a little loud. The aperture kind of feels maybe a little cheap, but other than that, this really is one of my favorites as far as build quality goes. The two Minolta lenses feel great as well. They both have more narrow, but still nice to grip focus ring, I should say. It is damped. There's some grinding that happens on the 1.7, actually even the 1.4 a little bit. And the grip is rubbery, which isn't my favorite, but some people might like it. The Nikon 50mm 1.4 is probably next as far as my favorite. Just a solid build all around. The other ones are similar. The Smc Pentax, for instance, the non-super version, it's fine. It's a plastic ring and it's kind of slippery though. But the ones I really hate, the ones that I have to say are my least favorite, are the Canons. The build quality is fine, there's nothing wrong with them. What I really hate about these lenses though is the breech lock that these lenses have. This breech lock system is probably fine if you have a camera that will work with it, the old Canon lenses, but it's really fiddly with the adapters, and I don't know of an adapter that actually makes sense to use. For instance, a lot of them have this lock this way, open this way, which is totally not intuitive. You would think that the one that it's on is what it is, but it's actually backwards. So when it's here, it's not open. It's saying you got to move it there to open it. That not intuitive, doesn't make sense. That's not a criticism of the lens itself, but most adapters. What is frustrating though is you have to get it just right. And I'm not gonna go through the process here. If anyone is really interested in that, I can. There are videos out there, but you just have to get it just perfect. I'm getting pretty good at it. But if you don't get it just right, the aperture won't work. So anyway, I don't like that though. It's fiddly. When you're trying to go fast, it's annoying. What I will say though is that if you do go with a Canon with a breech lock, just once you get that adapter on there, leave it there. Don't ever take it off again. And if you plan on swapping adapters, don't go with Canon. So unlike modern lenses, the diversity of weight between these lenses here is not significant. Here on the screen now you can see that I've ordered them by weight. Interestingly, the two Nikon lenses were at the bookends for all the lenses, as far as the heaviest being the 1.4 and the lightest of all these lenses being the 1.8. Also, when it comes to vintage lenses, of course we know we're often gonna have to take a hit as far as sharpness goes. Having said that, a few of these lenses I really feel can compete with the quality of many modern lenses. Now there's an important caveat here, and the first is that vintage lenses, more than any modern lens, or most I should say, most good quality modern lenses, they suffer from variance, which means that sharpness could be all over the place from copy to copy. So my results here are interesting, but I really don't know if what I'm seeing here is consistent with patterns of other lenses of the same brand and type. You might experience a sharper one with the same copy. So if your experiences differ from what I'm seeing with any of these lenses, please let me know in the comments. I'd be super interested in hearing that. I've got them here on the screen rated from 1 to 5, with a score of 5 being most sharp, 1 being least. To keep things fair, quote unquote, I've only scored sharpness of these lenses using apertures which are consistent to all the lenses. So from f2.8 to f16, and I looked at center sharpness as well as close to the edge, as close as the edge I can get whilst being adapted to a crop sensor camera, that is. The results were super surprising to me. The non-SC version of the two Canon lenses was the sharpest of all of these 10, followed by the two Nikon lenses, which scored almost identically. The Olympus 1.8 was next. It would have done better if it just got kind of unsharp, I guess, really fast. There's just kind of this cliff after f11. f16 was just not that sharp. But other than that, this actually may have been the sharpest of all of these lenses if it wasn't just for those higher aperture numbers on this lens. But pretty impressive actually, other than that. I was really surprised to see the Super Takumar take the 5th place spot, and that's because it's really old and doesn't have a great reputation of being super sharp, but it actually was a little bit sharper than the newer Asahi Pentax fit. I don't know what to call these. There's all these words: Super Takumar, Asahi Pentax, blah blah blah. The older one sharper than the newer one, at least for me, and that was interesting, but only by a hair. The two Minolta lenses came next, side by side, kind of middle of the pack. The SC version of the Canon lenses, the two Canon lenses, was almost last and then dead last. Really disappointingly so, actually. I expected this, maybe it's just the name, Carl Zeiss. You just expect that it's gonna do better, but this planar 1.7 really struggled, wasn't very sharp, and definitely the worst of the pack, but again, could just be my copy. So now let's talk about color, and one thing we do need to address when we do this is the elephant in the room, and that is this guy, our radioactive friend. When they produced this lens, they used a thorium coating, which yellowed with age, and also, by the way, is radioactive, as we've mentioned. Supposedly, you can fix the yellowing by leaving it out in the sun for a couple days, I guess. People have said that that works. I haven't tried that. Don't really relish the idea of leaving it out. I don't know. It just, I guess what's worse could happen. It's an old lens, right? Easy to replace, but I just haven't wanted to do that. So mine is yellow, but it's really not that hard to correct this yellowing by moving things slightly to the cooler end of the white balance in post NBD. So for these color comparisons, I will show you the photos from the Super Takumar, which are going to be corrected for proper white balance. So just so you know that. So when we compare the colors of these lenses, things are surprisingly consistent. I really expected these vintage lenses to do more interesting things when it comes to color, but things seemed fairly true to life, and the differences were pretty subtle. Of the two Canon lenses, the SC version lacks contrast that most of the other lenses have. I did notice, especially at the wider apertures. With the Nikon lenses, I do notice that the reds seem to be darker than the other lenses. And with the Minoltas, these are probably the ones that the most identifiably were different than others. They have a yellow cast. You'll see this in both the yellows that seem more saturated, but also with the reds, of course, which turn a little bit more towards the orange side of things. You also notice this with skin tones, where the Minolta lenses exhibit stronger saturation in those yellows. But those are the only real substantial differences that I've been able to detect in color rendering for these. As with color, with bokeh, I really expected some more vintage craziness happening, but things were pretty straightforward and consistent, surprisingly. And I think most people would be hard-pressed to find any significant differences between these lenses unless studying them side by side very carefully, like I've done here. Additionally, when it comes to bokeh, everyone prefers things slightly different. But what I personally look at in these lens comparisons are distractions. And whether you think distracting bokeh is good or bad, that's up to you. For me personally, I don't like it. I like as little distractions in the background as possible. Guys, the background is not the point. I don't understand the craze, the obsession with the background when the subject is what we're interested in. But you know, if you're into that, that's totally cool, you do you. With the 1.8/1.7 lenses, I have noticed that most of these have a lot of definition in the bokeh balls, a lot more that is, verging on soap bubble quality, but not quite. I wouldn't say there any of these lenses are actually soap bubble lenses. Some people will like this effect, others will consider those hard edges on those bokeh balls distracting. But if smoothness is your thing, the Contax Carl Zeiss Planar is clearly the winner in the 1.8/1.7 camp. Here you can see it compared to the Minolta 1.7, and it's just smoother with the planar. But the Olympus 1.8 is also very, very good. But when you look at the 1.4s and add those to the mix, we get a few more winners. The Minolta 1.4 actually has very smooth bokeh, but seems to suffer a bit more with halation, with things in the photo that are close to out of focus. Just barely out of focus, they have that kind of glow to them. The Nikon 1.4 definitely has the smoothest bokeh, the creamiest bokeh, though maybe a smidge more color fringing than the other lenses. But if character is your thing, then the Nikon 1.8 might be the way to go. It seems to have a little bit more soap bubble quality to it, at least more than the others, and at least with my copy. The Super Takumar has the strangest of the bokehs, I would say. I don't really know how to explain or describe it. It just seems more chaotic and unpleasant, to me personally. Now, one factor that means a lot to me that may or may not matter to you at all is close focus capability of these lenses. For these lens tests, I didn't really want to try to measure or track down the exact close focus or reproduction value for each of these lenses. Besides that, there are just slight variations in focal ranges that also affects that. So I just took a photo of my son as close as I could get to his right eye with each of these lenses, and then I just drew a circle over the iris and measured the diameter of that in pixels to figure out the relative close focus ability of each of these lenses. And these results show that the Nikkor 1.4 has the largest reproduction ratio, but really the top 6 are all quite close, and then there's a large jump between those and the last 4, the 2 Canon lenses, the Nikkor AI 1.8, and then the Contax Carl Zeiss planar. Finally, the last category I want to talk about and compare is video. A lot of people use vintage glass for video because manual focus is more often used with video than it is with photography. So we definitely should talk about it a little bit. With this category, I've grouped several important factors for video. First consideration is how much focus throw a lens has. If you've got to sit there and crank and crank and crank to get focus, that's obviously going to be a big drawback to that lens, depending on how you focus and if you use a motor or not. Additionally, how is the feel and the sound of the focus? Does the lens grind when it's turned and make a noise like some of these, or is it nice and damped? A well-damped lens gives smoother focus for video. And finally, does it have significant focus breathing, which means the field of view is changed whilst focusing? For me, the Nikon 1.4 is the clear winner here, with a very nice damped focus experience and with a throw that is within acceptable range for me. The 2 Canon 1.8s are acceptable. They're pretty good, all things considered. The Olympus 1.8, where did he go? Here he is. This is very nice and damped. Probably my favorite as far as just pure focus throw, but it's a little further to go than the Nikon 1.4, which is a bummer. Oh, and then the other thing with this one is that it has not good focus breathing, so it's not one that I would be at the top of my list for video. Both Minolta's and the Takumar, the Pentax-M, I should say, Asahi, sorry, not Takumar, they have smooth focusing, but they also have really long focus throws, this one especially. And then for me, the Nikon 1.8 and the planar, they grind when focusing and they're not well damped at all. The Super Takumar is last place beyond dealing with the color cast, which you'll deal with. It has an extremely long focus throw, and it also exhibits more focus breathing than any of the other lenses. So between all those factors, for me, there really are just 2 of these lenses that I think that I would like to own and keep and use. The first, fortunately, is one of the lenses that I actually do own myself, and that is the Nikon 50mm 1.4. I'm continually impressed with the quality of film era Nikon glass, and this lens is absolutely no exception. It's sharp, it has close focus, has excellent build quality, is the winner in the video category, and is just generally, there's nothing that you can really complain about with it. But second place for me was the Olympus Wiko 1.8, and the reason is actually, it's not a very strong reason. It didn't actually perform the best out of any of these lenses for any reason. The reason I like it so much is just because it's so pleasant to use and it's so pretty. It's my favorite looking, it's my favorite to use, and so it's probably replaced the Super Takumar as far as like favorite lens to use and just joy to have on my camera. So these are the 2 that I'm probably gonna stick with. I'll buy this one, I'll keep this one. The others, they didn't make the cut. But that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, let me know what sort of other vintage lens videos you'd like to see me do. I'm happy to reach out to KEH and try to get some more lenses in and compare them if you'd like. For instance, I'd love to do a 35mm comparison. If you really feel strongly about it, maybe we could find a way to do it on a full frame camera. Actually, the problem wasn't owning a full frame camera. The problem was getting adapters for all of these. I already had, between me and KEH, I already had a bunch of the X-mount adapters, so it was just made more sense from a feasibility standpoint. But if enough of you are clamoring, maybe we can maybe we can do the next one on full frame. But another video we could do is vintage character lenses, so lenses that are known for their unique character that they give to photos. That might be interesting as well, but yeah, let me know what you think of those ideas. And in the meantime, remember, kindness before cameras. We'll talk to you again real soon.